Welcome back to Grief Inspired. My name is Catherine McNulty, and today we are answering a question related to grief from a woman named Ivy. And her question is so good, but it's also very big. So we're going to unpack it one section at a time. Stay tuned. This conversation is about the change related to grief. Now, we all know that there is so much change that happens during our grief process. And Ivy asked a very good question. So I'm going to read her question for you, and then we're going to dive in and talk about each of the topics that she brings up. She says, how can one deal with all the forced changes that come after the death of a loved one? I lost a parent suddenly, and there is so much legal, emotional, and physical change that has taken place. So much so that I don't feel I've had enough time or space to grieve or move into acceptance. It always feels like something is happening, and it's making me feel very insecure and also irritable. So Ivy, first I want to say thank you so much for this question. I love that you use the word forced changes, because I think that that's the one of the biggest challenges with grief is that the change that we experience is forced. We don't choose it. It's not like we have time to prepare for it. And even if we do, we're not ready for it. And so having it saying forced change makes it feel like it's something that's being done to us. And I think that that's a common feeling that so many of us have, because we're like, this isn't a change that I wanted to have to deal with after the death of a loved one. Now, Ivy, you lost your parent suddenly, and you mentioned legal, emotional, and physical change. And there is so much there. In the legal space, dealing with a will, dealing with all of the bills and everything that they had that was set up for their life, having to deal with probate or potentially properties that were owned, dealing with all of the finances, trying to handle maybe their Social Security, or figuring out just what's going to happen next from a legal perspective is in and of itself completely overwhelming. And then you mentioned emotional changes, grief and loss, trying to handle everything that you have to do and emotionally deal with that while dealing with the loss is very, very big, and can leave us feeling, like you say, it makes you insecure and irritable, because sometimes we don't know what to do. And when we don't know what to do, it creates fear, it creates anxiety, that can make us irritable. So I think that, everything that you're saying rings very much true. And I think so many of our viewers can feel the same way. So if you know what she's feeling, please comment below so that Ivy knows that she's not alone. And then you mentioned physical change, and, these things are all tied together. Physical change of maybe having to move yourself, or maybe having to deal with the house that your parent lived in. I know I'm dealing with that right now, because my dad passed away, and my mother is choosing not to live in the home that they lived in because she doesn't want to be there alone. But the house is there, and it's full of their belongings, and we need to figure out, what do we do with all that? What do we, how do we sell the house? Do we rent it? What do we do with it? And so it is a lot. And all of these things, each one of them individually, the legal, the emotional, and the physical changes that you mentioned, are a lot in and of themselves. And saying that you don't feel like you have enough time and space to really grieve, totally get that. And I think it's very accurate. And so many people here, like I said, would understand what that is. Some of my thoughts around after the loss, there seems to be this pressure to do everything right away and to deal with things very quickly. And that can be really challenging because we are deep in our grief. And so we barely have the energy to grieve, let alone deal with all the physical and the legal changes that you mentioned. So one of my thoughts, and one of the things that I've been thinking of myself, is, take a look at what actually needs to be done. Sometimes we can get overwhelmed because it's all rolling around in our head. So if you can take what needs to get done, get it down on paper so that you have a list that you can prioritize and say, okay, like, what's the first thing? What's the most important thing? And what I've come to find is that sometimes we feel this pressure to do everything right away. And to be honest, maybe there's an opportunity to let it be for a little bit. So my advice is to do the things that you have to do right now. Do them one at a time, make sure it's prioritized, and say, okay, this is what I'm focused on today. I'm not going to worry about everything else and all the other things I need to do because I know there's so many. I'm going to prioritize and focus on the thing that absolutely has to happen today. So I think that's something that can be helpful. I think that this is a time to elicit the help from people around you. So if you have people who are offering to help, let them help you. If there are people who maybe who have experience in different areas, reach out to them, right? I have a friend, Katrina, and I can drop her information below. She wrote a book all about the probate process and what has to happen and how do you deal with that. And these are things that are really good to know before your loss has happened. But sometimes we don't, because we don't prepare for these things. But she's a resource that I have, and she helps people through these kind of processes because she's worked for an attorney for a long time. If you have an attorney who can help you with a will, with the trust, with all of the legal documentation, this is the time to elicit their help as well. And physical changes, and if you have to deal with clearing out a house, sometimes we think that we have to do this all alone. Ask for help. I've found that there are organizations that would be more than happy to come and reuse and make use of any furniture, any housewares, any clothing that you might have, and use it to serve other people. So it's a donation kind of opportunity, and a lot of the organizations will come directly to your home and pick it up for you. So again, my advice, because there is so much emotional happening, this is a time to take sort of the easiest path for yourself and give yourself a break. And if you lose a little bit of money, if you don't get every dollar for every item that happens to be in their house that you might be able to relinquish, right? If you sold it, if you put it on eBay, if you put it on Facebook Marketplace, if you don't get every single penny, maybe that's okay. So looking for areas where you can ease up on yourself a little bit, and ask yourself what really needs to be done, and what can you put off. And then in between all of that, like, take a break and give yourself some space to breathe. So when you have weekends, right? We've been going back and forth to my parents' house to deal with all the things at the house, right? And we were doing it for a while. It was like every weekend or every other weekend. And it got to be a little bit overwhelming. And so we decided, like, let's take a weekend off, right? Let's spend some time, go to church. Let's spend some time with the people who love you. That's something that's going to fill your soul. And that may be going and being with people, and it may be just being alone. It may be like getting away out of your environment. I am traveling right now for my day job. And sometimes getting yourself out of the environment that you're in can be a really good thing. It's almost like forced rest, because I don't have the responsibilities here of my home and everything in the evenings when I have a chance to just decompress a little bit. And so that's a good thing. And then go to the things that are distractions that help you when you need them. I'm not telling you to not grieve. I'm not telling you to ignore your grief at all. What I'm saying is you can take a break from it. And depending on what your distraction is, for some people it's Netflix or reading a book or just getting out in nature or playing video games for some people, or, what is it? Doing a little bit of like antique shopping where you're just kind of walking around and looking at things. Like, what are the things that relax you and help you as you grieve? And then lastly, you say like, I feel like I don't have enough time and space to grieve and move into acceptance. And what I hear in that sentence of yours is a sense of urgency that you have, that you feel like you need to grieve quickly, that you need to get through this, that you need to get to acceptance quickly. I love the idea of moving to acceptance, of getting to a place where you say, yes, my parent has died. I acknowledge and accept that they have died. And I'm learning how to deal with the new reality I have, right? Accepting their loss can mean realizing that you can't pick up the phone anymore and call them, or the times when you forget that they're no longer with you, or being able just to go and see them. And, with me and my dad, like the fact that I didn't see him every day. And so sometimes it's a little bit surreal. Like I have to remind myself, oh my gosh, he's gone. And that takes a minute. So don't think that moving into acceptance is something that's easy or quick. And I think we all have a tendency to be a little bit impatient with ourselves because we want to get there. We want to feel like, okay, I've done this grief thing, like I'm okay now. And what I want to challenge you and encourage you to think about is being able to be okay as you're grieving and be able to say like, yes, this grief feels uncomfortable. All of these changes that I'm going through that are forced changes, like you said, they make you uncomfortable, but sometimes it's learning to sit in that discomfort a little bit and saying, yes, I'm overwhelmed by these legal things that I don't know how to do, because so many of us don't know how to do that. There's all these physical changes that I feel overwhelmed and anxious and unsure of how to make these decisions and what to do. But it's like maybe just give yourself a little bit of a break, take a deep breath. I think something that's super useful is this somatic work. So somatic work means your body, and that your emotions, when your emotions get out of control, the way to help with that is to get back into your body. And so, for example, putting your hand on your heart and just holding them and saying, I am okay, and taking a deep breath and just saying, I'm okay right now. I'm okay right now, will ground you in the present moment and give you a little bit of respite. Another one that I completely love that I do myself all the time is you take your right hand and you put your right hand under your armpit. You just get it under there and you hold. And you take your left hand and you put your left hand on top of your other arm and you squeeze. And you take a deep breath and you squeeze and you give yourself a hug, and you feel your body. You can feel your heartbeat probably under your right hand, and it just, it's calming. It brings you back to the physicality of your body, and sometimes that's what we need. We need to get out of our heads and into our bodies, and so sometimes that can help. I want to thank you so much for this question. Again, give yourself time and space to grieve. It doesn't have to happen right now. If you need to jump into my course, call me. Let's get you into a course. Let's get you with other people. Let's get you connected so that you can remember that all of this that you're going through, all of the legal, physical, and emotional changes that you're going through, you don't have to go through it alone. And so many of us know the feelings that you're going through, and just being reminded that you're not the only person that this is happening to, and that other people have gotten through this, and that other people have figured it out one day at a time, one line item at a time, one item that's prioritized at a time, is really something that is really a gift that you can give yourself. So please give yourself a moment, take a deep breath, do the somatic things that I suggested, and then begin to build your list and prioritize them one thing at a time. I hope that helps you. Please continue to reach out to me. If you have a question that you want me to answer just for you, like I did for Ivy, please drop me a comment below. You can go to my community section on YouTube, and there's a post there that says, leave me your questions. So find that post, leave me your questions, or send me an email at griefeinspired@gmail.com, and I'll create a video just for you and answer your question, because I can guarantee you that if you have the question, other people do. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being part of my community, and I can't wait to talk to you directly too. Bye for now.